What is up, everyone? Welcome to L2R2, the PlayStation Podcast. My name is Fonzie, joined by my co-host, Cal Monroe from across the pond. Cal, how the heck you been?
Yeah, good. Yeah, tired. I've started doing trying to do more kind of exercise related things.
Yeah,
So I do some a class on Sunday morning. So yeah, tired, but also I think on Sundays I get tired anyway because it's the frightful day before work. But
right.
no, otherwise good. Yeah, as we were saying before, it seems a bit brighter here, which is always nice for the old mood. But yeah, all just normal, same old, all good.
Nice. Are you still doing is it the Sunday dinner or lunch, brunch in the UK? How does that work with your
Yes,
workouts? Are you still doing that?
yes, yeah. Sunday roasts.
Sunday
Yeah, we're
roast.
actually having one that is being sort of cooked and prepared
Ooh,
currently, sort of alongside this. So yeah, we got like a big sort of joint of beef in. Which would be sort of roasted in the oven, and yeah, nice vegetables, potatoes, and yeah, things like that. So yeah, best thing about probably the only good thing about Britain, I think, is a Sunday roast. But yes, I'll be looking forward to that later.
that is awesome. That is awesome. Right before we went live, like 10 minutes before, we had every once in a while we get people that walk up to our apartment and it's like a religious group wanted to
Mm.
ask you something or whatever. And I didn't answer because I'm always scared to answer the door. And it makes me more angry like that. I don't care, whatever people's group are, that's totally fine. The only thing I find offensive is knocking on my door. Like I don't want anyone ever knocking on my door. There's just no
Yeah,
reason for it. I
no,
don't know. Is this the purge? Is it 28 days later? Don't
yeah,
knock at my door. Unless you're like the pizza guy. Even then, leave it there. I'll come out when I'm good and ready when you've gone.
yeah,
Don't knock at my door.
yeah. I agree. Especially there's all these like doorbell footage videos that all seem to be in America, and people in America have guns. So yeah, I would be the same if I was you. Yeah, I wouldn't want anyone sort of any strangers near me at all,
Yeah.
really. But yeah, it's funny you say about like the delivery drivers, especially with the food. Is we use I don't know if you get like Deliveroo. Is that something you have over there, or is that just a
I like
thing?
the sound of it. It
Yeah,
sounds very
it's
UK, but
it's
yeah,
one
we
of
have
the, yeah.
delivery.
Yeah. So we have one called Deliveroo, which is one of the main ones in Brighton, and you always have to give them like a code or a number, so you have to interface with them.
Yep.
I guess it's a way to like prove that they delivered it to you and things like that. But yeah, I would much rather if they could if we could get like a chute that they just put the food
Yeah.
down and just arrives. I'd have to like just stay in my pants and not move. Um, but yeah, that is an annoying part. But again, in the UK, we don't really have to worry about crazy people with guns. So. And again, that's just me basing my entire knowledge and experience from those like Ring doorbell videos that I see online. But
Or you watch
yeah,
John Wick and you think everyone's doing that over here in the
yeah,
UK
exactly, yeah,
or in
yeah.
America.
But I mean, obviously, I'm being facetious, but there are lots of people in the UK who do like think like that about America. Like
Sure.
they're just like, oh no, I would want to go over there because you might get shot. And it's like you do know America's like 400 times bigger than the UK probably. Like the chances of you
Yeah.
getting shot is pretty slim. Well, I've said that now. You're probably going to go and get shot now. I've
That's the
jinxed
thing.
it.
It's like you mentioned people have those like assumptions of America. It's like they're kind of right. It's we're just numb to it.
Yeah,
We're kind of
yeah,
so used to it here, and it's a whole, it's a huge issue that we have. But like you just get numb to everything, where it's like it's just kind of
yeah,
becomes life. But yeah, it is
yeah,
scary, and that's why
yeah.
I don't want people knocking on my door.
No, exactly. Yeah, yeah. You don't want to have to get your gun out and
Right.
when you don't need to.
Or put my pants on. I don't want to have to talk to anybody,
Yeah, no,
interact with
no.
any stranger, even if I know you. It's like don't come like unless we have arranged this. Don't ever
Yeah,
just like walk up. Who are you?
I think that's the worst as well. Is when because a lot of the time when you order food, like it's normally because like maybe you're hungover, you're having like a lazy day, and you're in bed, and you just order food on your phone, and then like like 5 minutes before you have to get. Like, I normally just put like a dressing gown on, and then just sort of like open the door slightly and do the transaction. But yeah, that is a part of it. Like I wish that they could somehow bring it to me in bed. But we're not quite there yet with technology. So maybe soon we'll have drones that can like fly through your window
Yep.
and drop it off, which would be yeah, great.
I've always loved the idea of a service where like they would brush your teeth at night while you're asleep, and maybe
Yeah.
they shoot some kind of dart and it just like sedates you, you don't feel it, and then they come in, brush your teeth, maybe
Mhm.
even like change you, put your clothes on, and then they're out. So you wake up in the morning, you're ready to go.
Yeah, yeah, that would be nice. And there's even been times where, like, if I'm feeling extra organized the night before, I'll like get like, I mean, this might just be a normal thing a lot of people do. I feel like it probably is, but I'll like get my t-shirt, like my clothes, like ready, like just so I don't even have to search through like my drawers and things in the morning. I get like my shoes ready, I get everything sort of prepared. And I'll just wake up in the morning. I'll probably forget I even did it and just like find a different t-shirt and things. But yeah, I do have those nights sometimes where I'm like, "Do you know what? I'm going to get up really early tomorrow. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be really organized." And then obviously it comes round,
Right.
and morning me is far stronger than evening me. So I normally lose that battle.
Yeah, it's everyone thinks that, but it
Yeah,
never happens that way. And if you
yeah,
are like, if you wake up and you're organizing everything and your life's great, it's like I don't trust you. You're not
yeah,
a person that I would believe
yeah.
in
The,
any situation.
the only time I'm ever able to wake up in the morning is if like I'm stressed because I have to get up in the morning. So like if I know I have to be up for like I don't know some work thing or some kind of appointment, then I could like go to bed at like 3 a.m. and still get up like 2 hours later and be fine. But
Mm,
it's like when it's just in like the middle because also if I know I don't have anything planned for the day like on a weekend, I find it easier to get up early then sometimes as well.
yeah,
But there's some kind of like middle line where it's like I could call in sick to work and stay in bed all day. That's which unfortunately is like Monday to Friday, so I have that
right.
feeling every single morning.
Yeah, it's a struggle. I hear you. Every time I wake up, it's just the immediate debate of like, what can I do to like fake that I'm, in trouble or sick? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
always that. Even as I'm getting ready to like for to get to work and stuff, I'm just like, what can
yeah,
I still do? Can I say my tires popped or something? And like,
yeah.
but I just
And,
keep going and
and it doesn't take a lot. Like it takes what, like maybe 10, 15 minutes of just being awake and like doing things. Then you're like, oh,
right.
I don't even know who that person was earlier. Like, I feel all right actually. But it's
Yeah.
still that person earlier is, for me at least, is the strongest out of all of my kind of personas. That there's nothing I can do to. It's like that version of me's word is final. It's like no, you don't want to. You don't want anything. You just want to lie
Right.
here and do nothing. You're lying to yourself.
Yeah. No, it's a strong force.
Yeah.
Well, Callum, it's been a little while. How you been? You mentioned you've been fine. That's great. What you been playing?
So I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth,
Oh,
which I haven't 100%ed it or anything like that. I just finished the kind of main story, and I loved it. I got to a point where there's so much sides, like it's so ridiculously big with side things, mini. It's like I don't know if you played Yakuza. It's like Yakuza level amount of mini games. They're all really good, but there's just so many of them. Um, and I was finding myself getting sidetracked. Like, oh, this is now popped up on my map. I'll go see what that is. And I got like maybe 70 hours or so in, and I was like, I've still got like 4 chapters left of the story. So I had to kind of just start mainlining it, knowing that I could come back and do all this at a later date. Because it was sort of getting to the point where I couldn't even remember what was going on in the story because I was doing so much other side stuff. Where I was almost like, is there even a story in this, or is this just me
yeah.
kind of running around and doing this? But no, that was great. Really, really enjoyed that. And now I've finished that, I've gone back to Persona 3 Reload, which I'm nearing the end of as well. And I'm looking forward to finishing that so that I can kind of sit back and think about what's next to
Mm.
play. Because I feel like these two games, both fairly big JRPGs, once they're kind of out the way, I can reassess where I'm at. And I've got a few candidates, but yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of just being done with those two and moving on.
Now in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, too many names in that name, but
Yeah.
um, I never played any of the Final Fantasies, and I know it's a whole
Hmm.
huge series. But the with seven, it always stood out to me because over the years, it was a big moment when whatever character dies
Hmm.
and it's not really spoilers. It's like
No,
30
yeah,
years
yeah,
old or whatever,
yeah, yeah,
but they die, and it's a huge deal. I remember that growing up. It's just being a thing. Has the remakes tackled that yet? Has that happened in these?
Yeah, so I mean, I won't say just in case you end up playing. Oh, the end of Rebirth is the kind of moment of that part of the game.
Oh,
So I think we've known for a while that there's going to be three games in this kind of like remake trilogy thing. So yeah, the second game to Rebirth ends around that time of the original, which is about halfway through the original game. I'd say maybe slightly less, um, or slightly more. But yeah, it was interesting because it's kind of they know that you know, so they
right.
kind of do a few things to like make you think about it um and about I don't know if you I'm sure you've probably heard before, but what remake showed when that came out back in 2020 was that they decided to kind of make this its own like alternate timeline.
Oh,
um
okay.
and so they kind of lean on that in Rebirth, where it's all about like, oh, these different worlds colliding, and like every choice you make opens up a new world, and so it gets a bit Kingdom Heartsy, a bit confusing and things towards the end, um, which is fine. Like it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know. I need to. What I need to do is I'm gonna replay all the chapters eventually on hard to try and get, because there's a trophy to do all the chapters on hard. And I'm gonna sort of make sure I'm just doing the story on those bits so I can kind of like re-experience it. Because again, the side stuff really, as great as it is, it really did sidetrack me and kind of delay my progress through the story. Where I just don't, I think it's made it a bit disjointed. So not sure how I feel on it yet. In regards to like how it played out as a story, but other than that, it's just so nice to kind of see all these story beats from the original, and also just all these characters. I mean, they're so much more fleshed out, and um, so it is great. As somebody who is more of a recent Final Fantasy VII fan, for sure, it doesn't have the same nostalgia as maybe some of the other titles in the series for me, but um, yeah, it's certainly amazing to see in this kind of glorious HD, if that's even what you call it anymore.
I
HD is
think
now like the standard D, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like full HD or whatever,
Yeah,
beyond
yeah,
HD,
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did see. It was something. It's just like an image circulating on Twitter, and it was showing the original. At one point, where in the original Final Fantasy VII, you're walking into this open world, but it's like
Hmm.
just this plain grass,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
they juxtapose that with the stuff they've added
yeah,
recently, and it's just like fully fleshed out, all kinds of stuff, just in
yeah.
the landscape, vegetation and whatnot. It's like a whole world that they implanted into that little space that you're just meant to walk through in the original, and yeah, it looks amazing.
Yeah, and I think it definitely deserved it, as well. I think it's easier for me to see that. I think because I didn't play the original Final Fantasy VII until slightly later, and out of all the Final Fantasies, it's aged the worst. Just the nature of when it came out, very early 3D, really horrible like polygonal kind of figures. Even like 8 and 9 that were also early 3D, at least they had a bit more of like a style,
Mm,
and were able to kind of utilize 3D a bit more, or a bit better. But yeah, so 7 was difficult for me to really get into in the same way. But I did end up really enjoying it. But yeah, then playing remake, it's like, yes, this is, we're really fleshing out these characters that they really deserve it. Fleshing out these places and the politics and the kind of setting and everything. Because even remakes just set in Midgar, which is maybe the first hour, 2 hours of the original game, and that game's like 35, 40 hours long. I'd probably say Rebirth is about the same length if you were to mainline the story.
mm,
Um, but with all the side stuff, I think it took me about 85, 87 hours to beat. So already we're looking at like triple the length of the original just from these two games.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's definitely it's really nice to kind of see it fleshed out in this way, and I think it's deserved of that. But it's also cool because it's not really a remake because they are very obviously telling a different story, which is just really interesting in itself. I've never really seen anything like that done before. Yeah, it was just great. It was such like a, for me anyway, it was such like a thing to get like sucked up into. Like I was just so excited for it. So it's just been a really cool kind of just experience in general to go through that. I'm sure it has been for many others as well. But yeah, again, in terms of how I really feel about the story, I think I'm just going to need to replay it and just leave off the side stuff so that it doesn't kind of disjoint the experience as much as it did for me.
And you feel like they, with all these side stuff you can do, it's not padded. Like it feels like it's necessary or it enhances, the game. It's not like you don't get the vibe that they are throwing stuff in there to justify. Because I think it's another $70 like
Mm.
full retail release, right?
Mm. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, again, if you were to mainline the game, it's still like 35, 40 hours, I'd probably say.
Gotcha.
And the original Final Fantasy VII was full of mini games anyway. Like there's the Gold Saucer, which is part of Rebirth, which was a hugely iconic location in the original game. It's basically like a big casino kind of theme park
Mm,
kind of place. Yeah, in the original there was tons and tons of mini games, so it was always obvious that they were going to have that, especially at the Golden Saucer. But I think also all the kind of side stuff just in the because it's like lots of different open worlds that you kind of like regions that you go to. Um, but no, I don't think it's necessarily padding. I think it just gives you a nice amount of stuff to do, and the mini games are really really good as well. I mean, some of them are more annoying than others, but some of them, like there's a card game, which is usually there's normally a card game in Final Fantasy, and they're normally really good. Called Queen's Blood, and it's like super addictive.
mm,
And there's another one called Fort Junon, which is a callback to a mini game in the original, actually, but it plays like I want to say a MOBA, or like one of those like three kind of lane games where you have to wait until you can like spawn things and there's
gotcha.
like different weaknesses and things like that, which is also really fun. So yeah, it's difficult because I guess it is padding, but it's there's enough there without it anyway. So it's kind of it is just extra stuff. So it feels more like Yakuza. It maybe is just how JRPGs are kind of the route they're kind of going down now. Because I know that the new Yakuza games, especially, I know that they're Sega rather than Square, but I know people love the mini games in those, so maybe they're just trying to pull from there. But yeah, it is. It's there's a lot of stuff, and yeah, it was a little bit tiring just because of my own brain, wanting to try and do as much as I could in my
Right.
first playthrough. But that's just me. It's just my own uh, idiocy, and I've heard from a lot of other people playing it that they kind of chose to just mainline the story slightly earlier than I did. So I think it is definitely a common feeling that I just need to at some point stop caring about all this stuff that I can just come back to at the end, and just get the story out of the way so I can enjoy it.
Nice. So I've been playing Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. I did tell you over the week I bought a copy of Lair for PS3 on eBay.
Yeah.
And it came in and I started playing it. I had to I pulled out my PS3 out of storage, and
Oh,
it was
nice.
the first time I played it in a while. And besides the just loading up the PS3, like it is just obnoxiously slow going through the menu, but I really dig that menu screen. Like it just reminded me like the live, backgrounds and stuff, and it was just neat
Mm.
to dust it off and play it. But the game itself is it sucks. But I want to spend more time with it because I only spent like an hour. That's all I could really get through before just like getting super frustrated. But
Yeah.
it's tough, and it's just a game that I remember being a big deal when the PS3 launched. It wasn't at launch. I think it was pretty close to launch though, but it was like their big showcase of the graphical power of the PS3. And going back to it, it's tough. It doesn't age well at all, and it's and then you have the motion controls, which were locked or baked in at the
Yeah.
time because you had the six axis controller. It had to use motion controls. They eventually patched it to where you don't need that. So I've
Right.
been playing just by using the sticks to move around and stuff. But it's did you have any experience playing this game? Did you ever give it a shot?
I didn't. I mean, I remember when I got my PS3, and I was slightly younger, and I think I remember the reception of that game was enough to put even me off back then when I wasn't really that into. It was a little bit harder to kind of be aware of what was bad, what was good, like it is now in this current age of sort of the internet. But no, I remember even back then, was it 2007 it came out, I want to say,
Yeah,
or
around there.
sort of around then. Yeah, I just remember how awful everyone was saying it was. So I was able to avoid it completely. Um, but it reminds me of a game that I did really enjoy, which I've only just kind of unlocked that memory of playing it on PSP, which was the Aragon game.
That sounds
Based
familiar.
based on like a it's based on like a book, which was then a film about like dragons and things, and you kind of fly dragons around, and that was great
Yes.
from what I remember. But yeah, Lair is not a game I have kind of been interested to try out, to be honest. But when you sent me that photo, I did think, oh, you must be wanting to claw your eyes out right now playing
Yeah,
it,
it
because
was
I've
more of
seen lots
like
of
a
footage of it.
right, and it's a game that I never really got to try, but it was just notorious for getting really bad reviews early on in the PS3 life cycle, and Sony having big hopes for it. And I think it's Factor 5 that originally made it, and I think they now closed or turned into something else, that
Yeah,
studio. But it had a lot of cool ideas, and once again, I'm only like an hour in. I do want to give it another shot to just to actually see what I think of it. But yeah, you're flying around on a dragon. You can do a couple different maneuvers and stuff. You're shooting fire, obviously, but like it's kind of like a infinite amount of ammo,
hmm
I guess, that you have.
yeah,
It's just the game is it's just rough around every edge. So like the cutscenes that happen, how they explain stuff to you, it's still trying to think that you have motion controls enabled, but you're using
right.
the standard controls, and it's just a
Have you
bummer. Like
tried it with motion controls just to kind of see how awful it truly is?
so I need to get a newer actual DualShock 3. The one
Right,
that I have is like a wired third party one that doesn't have it. So I
right,
I
okay,
only have the option to do the traditional.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, and there's a lot of it's the weirdest pop in I've seen in a long time, where you're flying around and they're trying to show like a large vista on screen, which is cool. So as you get closer to stuff, detail will pop in, but not just detail, like geometry will pop in. So like bumps and
right.
hills on the mountain will actually like physically pop up, not just
Well,
like a texture
obstacles,
changing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's strange.
yeah,
Um, but I could see where at that time they were trying to pull off, like, the water looks pretty good. They are trying to render a lot at once. So it's like I could see where this would have looked really cool back when it came
yeah.
out. It's just the controls are really, really
Well,
bad.
I think as far as I remember, it was mainly because it was so early on the PS3, and I think the PS3 was meant to be a bit of a pain in the ass to develop
Yeah,
for. Um, which is definitely a probably a good excuse to have. But you do know that you're going to have to get like the most genuine experience. You'll have to get six-axis controller without the rumble. So you've got I do remember
oh
how like
god, yeah.
cheap and light and plasticky they were. I mean, they were based, from what I remember, they were like exactly the same like feeling. I just remember them being so light, and I remember actually
Right.
playing God of War. I think it was either God of War 3 or one of the ones from like the HD collection on PS3. And I remember just it makes you want to press the button so quickly. And I remember I actually snapped one of the six-axis controllers, like the little circuit board inside, just from squeezing it.
Whoa.
Because they were just so light and flimsy and horrible.
Yeah.
So I would assume that would that would really add to the experience of Lair, just having that kind of weightless thing in your hands trying to control a dragon. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
no
Can't imagine.
vibration, nothing. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. Dropping the vibration. That's a
it
standard,
was
man.
a funny time. I mean, weirdly, like because I got a PS3. I'm pretty sure on the day it came out, 'cause I think it came out in the UK on Easter, and I got it on Easter. Um, I think mainly just because was moaning because my brothers had a 360 and I still had a PS2 and all this kind of stuff. Um, and I'll just never ever forget. To me, that was like the biggest generational jump I think I've ever experienced. Like playing like MotorStorm and Resistance
Yeah.
Fallen Man, and I played Gears of War on my brother's 360, but we didn't quite understand what HD was at the time, which was another really interesting kind of just period of time.
Hmm.
And obviously the PS3 made it slightly easier, using HDMI. Um, and I remember that first time I switched it onto HD, and it was like life changing. Like I was like, oh, you can actually read text on the screen.
Right.
I didn't know you were meant to be able to see that text and things like that. So, but yeah, great memories. Fortunately, not tarnished by playing Lair, which I was able to avoid.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point. Like one of the reasons why I decided to jump back into it or to try it for the first time, even though I've been thinking about it for years, was watching a Digital Foundry video on the first couple of years with the PS3 and the games that
Mm.
were full 1080p. Because at that time, that was no, it's full 720p. Because I think that was what was considered HD, or like that was the first entry into
Yeah, and they did
HD.
like 1080i, whatever that
Yeah,
means, and things like
and
that. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know what it means, but so they're testing these various games that were actually like full 720p or 1080p
Mm.
for the PS3. But one thing I found interesting and didn't realize was the PS3 let you change your resolution, so you could switch from like it's outputting 1080 or 720, but that would change how the games performed, various games. So you
Mhm.
could actually squeeze out a little bit more performance
Oh,
by
okay.
dropping the resolution manually, much like on a PC or whatever, like gives you those options. But the
Yeah,
PS3 let you do that, which was weird. And now that's not an
interesting.
option that you can really you can change, I guess whatever display you have on a console nowadays, but it
Yeah.
doesn't like change the performance of the game.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think back then as well, especially for me, I mean, I'm sure there were people who, were into FPS, and frames and things around that time.
Right.
But for me, around that time, I probably wouldn't have even noticed if a game was performing badly.
Yeah.
Um, so it's probably just not even something that registered with the majority of people. I know it was the same when I remember Call of Duty 4 came out, and that was like for a lot of people like their first foray into like multiplayer, anything. And I remember the same with Resistance Fall of Man, just finding it so bizarre that I was able to, on my games console, like play with just random strangers all over the world. So there were lots of things like that that I think, we were just kind of so caught up in that
Yep.
if we were to go back now and play a PS3, it's like how did I even stomach like how juddery and awful everything everything looks,
Right.
but that's just the nature of it, isn't it? It's the same with every kind of generation. And unfortunately, it'll be the same now when we go back and play, you know, PS4 games soon. We'll be like, how did we play this at, you know,
Yeah.
at 1080p of, on my 26K TV?
Right. Yeah, I think about that with like you mentioned, frame rates not being a big deal. It was the same for me where I didn't really care about it until I'd say transitioning out of the PS4 because all those
Mm,
games were really, besides like a
yeah.
shooter or something, they're locked at 30 frames. You have iconic games from Sony Studios, Uncharted, Last of Us that are all 30. I think
Hmm.
maybe with the PS4 Pro, they weren't really enhancing performance. It was more like this can be in
Mm,
4K now
yeah.
because of whatever
Yeah.
upscaling. So and I was totally fine with it. And then
Yeah.
I started playing more of these games in 60 frames with the PS5 and like getting a PC at the time. It was
Yeah.
just kind of night and day. But it's weird
And no one
to
talked about it outside of people on PC. Because I've had a PC and played on PC for ages, and so I understood like the difference. But yeah, I think because it was the norm, and because I primarily play on PlayStation, it was always pretty much every game I played was 30 FPS. So it just for my eye, there wasn't enough of like a quick swap from my PC to my PlayStation for me to really notice. But now, because pretty much everything's 60 FPS, now like it's just what everyone argues about. When back
yeah.
then, no one cared, except from the insecure PC Master Race people who would always be like, "Oh, why are you playing it?" And to be fair, they had a point because now when you play it 30
Yeah.
FPS, it was just not ideal. Um,
Right.
but yeah, it's interesting how times change and also how consoles kind of dictate the general conversation around it as well. Because PCs have always had, these kind of conversations, but no one's cared
No.
until
Yeah.
now.
No, it's interesting. And we'll talk about some 60 FPS stuff here in the news too, related to some games. But we'll jump into some of the news we got going, Callum. This one was been popping off for the past couple of weeks. We talked about it lightly last time we met, but now we've got some possible specs that have leaked. So this is Sony's PS5 Pro is up to 3 times faster, may arrive holiday 2024. It's from TheVerge.com. Sony is reportedly working on a PS5 Pro model that will include a far more powerful GPU. It's up to 3 times faster for certain tasks than the existing PS5 models. YouTuber Moore's Law is Dead claims to have gotten access to a technical overview document for the PS5 Pro, codenamed Trinity. And now Tom Henderson at Insider Gaming reports that the leaked specifications are accurate and the console is currently set to release during the holiday 2024 period. Getting through all that, so we got just a quick blurb of the Specs here: GPU is at 33.5 teraflops, whatever flopping teraflopping means. It can render 45% faster than PS5, potentially 2 to 4 times ray tracing improvement. Custom machine learning, AI upscale. This part is cool. So it's PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution is apparently what this is going to be called. It's rumored to use PlayStation machine learning to image upscaling that's similar to NVIDIA's DLSS or AMD's FSR on PC. The CPU is the same hardware with a 10% faster clock speed. System memory is improved, 28% boost over the PS5. PS5 or the Pro is also rumored to follow the same recent slim redesign, allowing for a removable disk drive attachment. Callum, we talked about this being a thing possibly last week, being rumored. Now this is still more rumored stuff, but all the big gaming outlets are really talking about this. They seem to be corroborating that it's legitimate. How do you feel about this improvement in performance? You think this is enough for you to jump on to something like a PS5 Pro?
Yeah, I think I would probably get one. I think mainly because I do live in regret of not getting a disk drive on mine. So that'd
Mm,
be just a good like two birds with one stone kind of thing. But yeah, sounds exciting. And actually, with Final Fantasy VII, that's the first game I think since PS5 that I've played on quality mode, in which is 30 FPS.
right.
Um, but there's a few caveats to it in that it seems to have like really good frame pacing or some kind of like motion blur that's like baked in that I don't really understand, but it basically just made it way more fine to kind of go through. Um, so yeah, so you know, as that's a fairly new game, it kind of is showing that a lot of these games are struggling to keep up to 60 FPS. Because when you put it in performance mode as well, it is like it's the first game I've seen where it's like noticeably like fuzzy and blurry
Mm.
and like just really really awful. So yeah, definitely, obviously, need it. But yeah, I think I will probably definitely look at getting one.
Yeah, one thing I've been seeing from other outlets talking about this rumored spec list is the super resolution, spectral super resolution. So this could potentially work on older games too. Like this could help upscale various games to 4K. I know on this leak sheet they mentioned, which I didn't put here, but that it can upscale to 8K for whatever reason. But I wonder if this would help older games, if you could render at like 720p, 1080p, and then render it at 4K, which would help the performance by using this AI upscaling, because that's what PC does. Like that's what
Mm.
DLSS is on PC. And so one of the things this is tied to is Digital Foundry did a report looking at the spec sheet, and they weren't impressed. They were like, it's maybe like 10-15% more performance. And
Mm.
how it relates to GTA 6, they're saying that still don't expect to run that game at 60 frames per second with a PS5 Pro, given
Mm.
the hardware on rumored on a Pro. But with that upscaling thing, I feel like that would do it. But I really don't know how all this stuff works. I'm just kind of like grabbing at straws here.
Yeah, there's so many like buzzwords and things like that that it does get a bit difficult to kind of, unless you like just have a full-time job's worth of time to kind of keep up to date with it all. But yeah, I think for me it's just as simple as there's a new PS5. It's gonna make my games perform better in some way. I'll be able to get a disc drive as long as it's not like obscenely expensive, and I can because also I'll probably just sell my current one
Yeah.
to sort of bump off some money from it as well, um, and go from there. And it's still, and the thing is as well, like as somebody who does have a PC and knows the expense put into that, like it's still going to be significantly cheaper than what I would spend or what people spend on PCs anyway. So
Yeah, it's a GPU
um,
price basically.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's I want to see. Of course, this is Sony hasn't mentioned anything yet. And one thing that I've read a couple of days ago was there's an internal review at Sony to see where this leak came from and who spilled the beans. So they're looking
Mm,
into it. But if they're going to launch 2024 this holiday season 2024, we have to get an announcement. Summertime. I would say we'll start seeing leaks with production. I'm sure chips that start going to production. Blah blah
mm,
blah. But I want to see when they do start promoting this thing, actually comparing like here's what this with the same experience of this game you've been playing. Here's what like Horizon Zero Dawn or Forbidden West looks like on the PS5 Pro. I want to see that apples and oranges comparison to make me go, oh, okay, now it's worth jumping in. But with this
Yeah.
data, and then also I'm such a huge Digital Foundry fan, and they can really sway me either way. So seeing them like not being impressed, I'm like, okay, well let's see what the performance actually looks like when we get to
Yeah.
see some videos.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see. And yeah, I'm just interested to see what it will look like as well. Because I'm just
Yeah,
hoping it's slightly better looking than the PS5. I mean, it's not the end of the world if not, but
I
I
think it's
do
gonna look the
wonder.
same, maybe a little fatter.
Because I would have thought with like the Slim, if they cared about people's complaints about it, they would have addressed it there, but they just made it worse. So I don't have high hopes. But again, it's not really that important. It would just be nice if they could make something look cool.
Yeah, I think it's it's gonna look the same. I imagine with they're production producing stuff on such huge scales, and they have contracts with people, and they have molds created. So it's like, how do we
Yeah,
make new hardware based on what we already have, kind of situation to keep costs down. So I don't think they're gonna reinvent this design. I think it's gonna be. I love
yeah,
the. I'm a sucker for weird shit. So like when that PS5 dev kit came out, those images leaked and they had the weird like triangle space in the middle missing. I'd like that. I want weird stuff like that. If you remember
yeah.
that, it looked like a slice for a pizza slice to be in the middle of that dev kit. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Or I think we're gonna start to get into them promoting that. I think we're a couple months away still, but
Mhm.
a lot of stuff has leaked. Now transitioning more to GTA 6, we got GTA 6 production reportedly falling behind. This is from Kotaku. Kotaku has learned from sources within or with knowledge of the game's development process that GTA 6 could miss its 2025 release window and slip into 2026. In February, following numerous leaks, Bloomberg reported that Rockstar Games was mandating its employees to return to work 5 days a week in the office beginning in April. While security and quality are reportedly the main reasons Rockstar is instituting the mandate to return to the office, Kotaku was told by sources who wish to remain anonymous that development on GTA 6 has started falling behind. This has leadership at Rockstar nervous and worried about the game missing the 2025 window and slipping into 2026, and is another big reason for the company to be pushing for a return to the office in April. This just reminds me of the PS5 Pro because as this knowledge leaked of a PS5 Pro, it seemed to always be tied with Sony wants this thing out for GTA 6 to have it
Mm.
as something, a reason for people to like, oh, you got to get a new console to also play this juggernaut game. So if this thing gets leaked, does that put their plans out of whack? I don't know. Are you really hotly anticipating GTA 6? What do you think?
Not really, to be honest. I'm kind of not really bothered by Rockstar's games. I mean, they're obviously like super impressive, especially Red Dead 2 from all the things I've seen. And it's that, to be fair, that is a game that I would like to eventually, you know, carve out a lot of time for. But yeah, GTA. I mean, I think the last GTA I really enjoyed was Vice City. I just think for me personally, it just felt better on when it was older and just more
Mm,
wacky and now it's just, I mean, it's still obviously wacky, but it's just a bit too like on the nose, a bit too big, a bit too, you know, real for me now.
yeah.
I just don't really care that much. I mean, I played GTA 5 and I was kind of caught up in the massive amount of hype around that game. It was crazy. Um, but like with most Rockstar games, even the ones I've enjoyed the most, I just find that towards the end, I'm always just wishing that it finishes. I always think that they always play really badly, and yeah, there's just something that I just don't vibe with their games really. I think the only Rockstar game I really loved was Max Payne 3, which I guess doesn't really count. Um, but yeah, so I'm not massively excited for it, but I don't know, like it's but with working from home and having to deal with all those kind of challenges, I'd assume this isn't uncommon just everywhere. And trying to kind of figure out these new processes and workflows and things like that. And also, I can't really remember many games where as like a consumer where they get delayed or they're told that they need more time and things like that. So it just seems fairly nothing to worry about necessarily. But yeah, like you said, if there are things in the pipeline that have been planned alongside this release, because it is so big and it's so um, like meteoric across the industry, there are probably other parties kind of relying on certain things
Yep.
with it. is going to be such a big release. So yeah, I think that's where it could cause some annoyance. But then, if these people like PlayStation and other people that are maybe relying on it hitting its release window, surely they would know that there's also a fairly good chance they would need to be delayed anyway, just because of life.
Right.
Um, so, but yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, just not maybe when we see more of it, and maybe I'll get caught up in the kind of hype when it comes out, and I'll end up getting excited. But as it stands, yeah, I'm just not really too fussed.
I think everyone will somehow eventually get swooped up into this
Yeah,
this wave because it's going to be the biggest video game release we've seen in since the last GTA. Really,
since GTA 5, yeah,
it's nuts how they dominated for so long, and
yeah,
yeah, it's a series that I played throughout the years, and it's cool. It's really cool. It's just not like I don't think about it when I think of like my top favorite games at all.
no,
I really respect what they can do with their sandbox and how fleshed out
yeah,
everything is, and
definitely, yeah,
it's amazing. But it's just kind of for me, I have enough, and then I kind of
mm,
move on, but I still highly respect what they do and how
yeah,
they can make everything just look so like the fidelity that if we can expect anything from that trailer, it looks insane. So I just want to play around in that world and see what it looks like. But
mm,
yeah, so it's a bummer that but it's also this idea of it getting pushed. It's like that's the world we're in now. Like all this
yeah,
stuff gets pushed. I wouldn't count on anything really, hitting its date. I would love for these devs to hold on to announcements longer. I get that they have to, when talk about stuff when they do, but it's like just be ready to announce it when
mm.
you are. But I know that there's a whole machine at play.
Yeah, and I think the stance of forcing their employees to return to the office is going to be tough for them. I think to kind of keep talent and keep people from going elsewhere because we have lots of there's lots of studios that are embracing the hybrid kind of thing, and obviously that it is challenging for these studios, and they're obviously doing things to try and keep hybrid so that there might be days where certain people need to come in, or you might have certain people who are supposed to come in or whatever, but to go like fully one way is how you kind of alienate people and just make them go, oh, okay, well, I'll go find a game studio that will fit my needs, because
Right.
the reality is since COVID, the world's a different place and people look at work differently now, and people with families now probably appreciate that they can actually spend more time with their family and work, and the bottom line will probably stay the same. So I think on that, I think that's probably the most interesting thing about it. And I've known that Rockstar have been doing this for a while anyway, but it'll be interesting to see kind of their reasoning behind it, because they surely know that this is going to force people to just basically look for jobs elsewhere where the remote working is more flexible. But it also might be more nuanced than this article makes it seem. Again, it might be that they have remote contracts and there are people who are allowed to work remotely. But yeah, hopefully they're not kind of just going like, no, everyone has to come in now, because that's just simply not how it is in the industry. Lots of other studios are hybrid or fully remote, even some of them. So people who want that are just going to be able to go and find opportunities there, I suppose.
Yeah, I wonder. So that side of the article, that's been in the news for a bit, where there's a lot of negativity. People were not happy, and it seems like internally
Mm.
with Rockstar, with this announcement of forcing, it seems like a lot of people going back to the office 5 days a week. When I first read that, I had more of a, I wouldn't say cynical, but I just didn't fully understand, and I still don't, right? But when I
Mm.
see the headline, I'm like, okay, these maybe Rockstar doesn't want your shitty boyfriend walking around behind you at your house as you're working on the biggest fucking video game
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
But I understand that's just me being an asshole. But I
Yeah, yeah.
understand that it's like you still have these people that they have lives and they want to like they maybe signed onto a contract letting them work hybrid, and that's what they signed up
Mm.
for. But then I wonder if there's Rockstar thinking, well, we'll just find somebody else because we are working on the biggest
Yeah.
video game in the world, and if that's going to make, are you going to lose people, or they're counting on
Mm.
them, even though there's competition, you can go elsewhere for a work at home dev job, if they're hoping that the pool of working on the biggest video game keeps people just dealing with it, which is still not a positive
Yeah.
thing to enforce.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure it will. And yeah, it's definitely more nuanced than maybe I kind of put it. And Um, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of reasons as to why, and you know, it's obvious that in a collaborative kind of space like game development, it's better to have everybody in the same building. 100%. You know, I know there is a big struggle, people getting used to, you know, having like meetings over like Teams or, you know, remote meetings, and you know, it's a lot more disconnected, for sure. And I know that when people do come in to the studio and work in the studio, it kind of feels more like a novelty now, where it's like, oh, this is so nice, like this is actually so much better.
Mm.
But I think just because, especially in the games industry or in any creative industry, it is all about retaining your talent, and you have to kind of offer them the best kind of option in like you said, like make it competitive. And they do have that pull of being rock stars, so maybe they are just leveraging that. But yeah, it's very complicated decision to make. Um, but yeah, it's just a reality of how the world is now and how people view work. And you know, some people, and I think there's cases for both sides where people say, well, you know, we're no longer in that kind of space anymore, so things should resume to normal. And I get that, but I think people who have had families during that time or started families during that time who don't know any different now, that is just simply how things are. So yeah, absolutely make that choice, but don't be surprised if you start losing, you know, your best talent, to, you know, because I'm sure there's plenty of opportunities, at studios who are a lot more flexible. But again, it's very nuanced, and it might be a bit more to it in that case.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're in this weird transition where the industry is now used to that. That wasn't a standard, and now it is, or
Mhm.
it's very common. So that push and pull, and that you know, that problem that can arise from studios not wanting to do that anymore, or you know, not understanding how to do it. It's interesting. But we will move on here. We got the next one is Insomniac's multiplayer Spider-Man project trailer leaked. This was a couple days ago, last week. Did you happen to watch this? I have the link here if you want to check it out. This
Yeah,
video.
I was just quickly looking at it now.
Hmm.
I'd heard things about it, but I hadn't seen it. And it looks as weird as I thought it might. Yeah, I don't get this at all. I don't know how it could even work. But as far as I know, it's not a thing now. It's been like canned, isn't it, or
Apparently,
something?
it's yeah, it's one of the
Yeah.
canceled things.
Um, yeah, I don't. I just have no idea how it would work, and I don't really see the point in it. I don't really understand just anything about it, really. Um, I get like, so I'm guessing it's like the Great Web is some kind of like multiverse thing, and you're all joining each other. So maybe on paper it sounds like it could work, but I just think the game, if it's based on, and it looks like it is, Insomniac Spider-Man, I just have no idea how that would play out, really. But you know, maybe it would have been cool, but also maybe there's a reason why it was cancelled.
Yeah, I could see a lot of potential in this. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense as far as like how they would get it done, but you throw a multi-dimensional blah blah blah, you know, Doctor Strange does something again and everybody's there.
Mm.
That's all you got to do, and then you have the excuse for how people are playing together. But I think in this world of these multiplayer games being so successful, or can, you know, the high potential for them being successful, and you have this gives me a Fortnite vibe. I don't know if they've really changed the visual style, but something about seeing all these Spider-Man just makes me think Fortnite. And I feel like kids, younger generation would absolutely gravitate towards
Oh
that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
for some reason, or because of whatever analysis Insomniac has done, they realize that maybe not enough to justify, you know, the cost of continuing to work on it. But man, I feel like another world, another dimension, this launches and it would be a juggernaut of a game.
Yeah, I think you're right that it would be massive just because it's Spider-Man and kids love multiplayer things, and um, but it reminds me slightly of the Ghost of Tsushima Legends thing, which again, when that came out, everyone was like, what is this? And
Yeah.
obviously, it did really well in the end. I don't know whether it did well like commercially, but I know people loved it. So yeah, I'm sure it would be good. It's just one of those things where I wouldn't have even like ever, if I was to sit down and like try and predict like 50 things, this wouldn't be anywhere near like that. So it's just one of those that kind of really caught me off guard. But yeah, who knows? In another, you know, world, maybe it would have come out and done really well. But I'm just not sure. I just can't envision playing it myself, if that makes sense.
Yes, I'm in the same boat where it's like I just need one Spider-Man at a time. I'm good,
Yeah,
but yeah, there's
yeah,
I guess people have friends and they like playing with each other, so yeah,
yeah.
go for it.
Weirdos, yeah, weirdos with
Yeah.
friends.
They're knocking on each other's doors. I can't have that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
Alrighty, Callum, we got moving on here. Sony hits pause on PSVR 2 production as unsold inventory piles up. It's from Bloomberg.com. Sony Group Corporation has paused production of its PSVR 2 headset until it clears a backlog of unsold units, according to people familiar with its plans, adding to doubts about the appeal of virtual reality gadgets. Sales of the $550 US wearable accessory to the PS5 have slowed progressively since its launch, and stocks of the device are building up. According to the people who asked not to be named as far as the information is not public, Sony has produced well over 2 million units of the product launched in February of last year. Not great news for them to stop because these things are literally piling up. What does this make you? Does this make you, weary of PSVR 2 in the future as we cross a year of this thing and Sony not being able to sell as many as they need to?
Yeah, I think I was already weary of it. Um, but I mean, I guess this is obviously good that they've taken the decision to pause production and try and, I guess, make some kind of intelligent decision on what is ultimately something that's clearly failing. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one because VR is already kind of a niche kind of thing, and it already targets a kind of smaller audience just by default. So it's always difficult to kind of know whether it's a success or a failure. But I just think in the current VR climate where you have things like the Meta Quest and, well, I guess Meta Quest is just, I'm assuming, storming away
I
with
think
it all.
that's, yeah.
But even that, I'm fairly sure that the newest Meta Quest sold quite softly. So I just don't
Mm.
think I think there needs to be kind of a bit of a structure in how we kind of look at things. But yeah, the PSVR 2 is obviously not doing so well. But yeah, I mean, I'd still be interested in getting one if they drop the price. I think that's another thing as well, is they don't seem to be doing that at all with
No,
it, which is quite surprising. When news like this comes up, you'd assume that they'd be like, right, well, let's get rid of, let's push some stock. But yeah, I was just looking now; it's still like £580 off of the PlayStation website. Well, 530 off of like certain sellers, but I'm pretty sure that's its kind of retail price, isn't it, or there or thereabouts anyway.
I think so.
Um, so so yeah, just I guess just bring down the cost and get rid of those units because who's going to buy them otherwise?
Yeah, the
They're
fact that
literally
they
just sat
haven't,
on nothing.
yeah, and the fact that they haven't at this point makes me think, okay, maybe they can't. Like they're already selling it. The margins are super
Mm,
thin on this thing,
yeah,
so it's like we can't afford to drop it any lower.
yeah.
And it's tough, but if you look at, you mentioned MetaQuest, I mean, I would imagine they are the controller of that market right now
Mhm.
because they've nailed this smaller price point. That's what people
Yeah,
want. They want the lower barrier of entry where they can
yeah,
jump in. They don't necessarily need a thing that needs to play like a PC or a PS5.
yeah.
It's cheap, and so it becomes a holiday gift. You're not thinking about it. You can add it,
Hmm.
but with the PSVR 2, it has all these different
And
caveats to it.
it's not something people really talk about either. Is the price of the MetaQuest? Like it is. I remember I got because I had I played on a MetaQuest one, and I was like, oh, this is really cool, but it's a little bit pricey. And I remember the second one got announced, and it was cheaper than the first and
Yeah,
better. And it was just like a no. I think it was like £250 or something. And I
yeah,
was just like, what's a no brainer? Because I mean, I'm not saying that is still a lot of money, of course, but that's all you pay, and that's it. And then you've got it, and pretty much every game comes out on it. Obviously, if you have a PC, it just ups the possibilities of what you can play. Um, so it is one of those things where you can like go around because VR is one of those things. It's kind of like a shared experience thing where you go around a friend's house, they've got a VR headset, you try it for the first time, and you're like, oh, this is actually really great. And I think everyone that tries VR loves it, but it is just that kind of barrier of entry. Um, but PSVR 2 just, and I think we've said about this before, it just has, there's no reason to get one over request from what I understand. There's no games exclusively on it from
right.
what I know.
Not enough to think
No.
about.
I think maybe Gran Turismo, and I
There's
think
Horizon.
Resident Evil, yeah, and I think Resident Evil 4 Remake VR is maybe exclusive. I don't know.
I
I'd
think so.
assume that'll just be timed anyway, so So you know, it has some things, but we're not just talking about almost double the price of a MetaQuest. We're talking about double the price of a MetaQuest and a PS5.
Right.
So you're talking like nearly £1,000. In fact, quite easily £1,000 to be able to play PlayStation VR2. And now I've never been in one, so I don't know how. And I'm sure, in terms of quality, it's probably up there, you know, with some of the best stuff on the market. I'm sure it's better than the Quest 2 in terms of quality. Um, but like with VR, for me, it's I don't need better than the Quest 2 at the moment. It's you know it's still fine. Maybe if I was to play a PSVR 2, my opinion would change. But yeah, it's one of those where it just seems so obvious why it's failing to me. And you know, you're saying then like maybe they can't afford to sell it at a lower price, but it's like, well, they're getting nothing right now.
Right.
I mean, I don't know whether you know maybe they're moving you know along in a kind of gradual enough way where they're like you know we'll eventually be able to sell them at this price. But for me, it's like, would you rather sell them really slowly at 550 or definitely sell through them all at like 350? I don't know, um, but yeah, it is surprising that it hasn't seemed to have a price drop yet. And if it has, I had no idea. So they need to be
No,
more
yeah.
public about that.
It's getting weird, but we'll see. Especially, I'm very interested to see when that PC update happens,
Yeah,
letting
yeah,
you
that
interact with
yeah,
it.
maybe they're waiting for that to see if that's going to help move some, and then if it doesn't, then maybe they'll be like, right, we have no choice, we have to lower the price of this thing.
Right. We will see. We'll move on here. Callum, we got Dragon's Dogma 2. So I just want to touch on this because it's all over the internet. It's huge. But we got the game finally released, and we got some pretty positive Metascore. So we got some of the gaming outlets here gave it various scores. We got VG247 gave it a 5 out of 5. Eurogamer gave it a 5 out of 5. GameSpot 9 and IGN 8. It has a Metacritic right now that varies on which platform, but 85 on PS5, 87 on Xbox, and 92 on PC. I know there is various like performance issues that it has.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that's the only reason why I'm not playing it. I want to see if they kind of iron that out. But is this on your radar at all, Dragon's Dogma 2?
I wish it was because I think it looks really good. And the performance issues don't bother me as much simply because I've just played Final Fantasy at 30
Sure.
FPS, albeit a very good 30 FPS, which I didn't even know was a thing until I played that. Um, but yeah, I think the main issue is I just don't have time. I can't fit it in really. It seems like a game I'd need to invest a lot of time into. Um, but yeah, it seems really cool. I mean, some of the clips I've been seeing are very, very cool. And I played a little bit of the first one, and the first one had similarly unique kind of experiences that would just kind of happen. So it's cool that's kind of what they focused on. You know, these kind of incredible happenstance kind of things that might occur. So yeah, it looks great. But yeah, I probably won't end up playing it. And if I do, it'll probably not be for a while.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I do want to play it. But it's same thing. It's adding another 80-hour experience, whatever, to my list.
I think
Like, I don't know.
one thing I found strange about it is I know there's obviously this big conversation about all the microtransactions and things in it, which I I struggle to kind of concern myself about until I see it myself, because the amount of times it gets blown out of proportion and things like that is it happens all the time. So I like to kind of see it for myself. From first glance, it doesn't seem great. Some of the things that apparently you can pay for, but I think the thing that kind of weirds me out the most is that I only heard about this, or I only kind of seemed to gain traction like a couple of days after the game was already out. So I kind of don't know why it wasn't mentioned in reviews or like pre-release stuff, which is kind of interesting to me. I don't, maybe that, and I don't mean to sound like there's like a conspiracy or anything like that, but um, I do hope that it's not something that was kind of like hidden by Capcom when sent out to reviewers, and then it goes out to the public, and then they like, flip a switch, and it's like, oh, yeah, you can buy fast travel now.
I
Because I would
think it.
assume it would affect the score slightly.
I think it was exactly that. There was one
Right.
reviewer talking about how they didn't have access to any kind of a marketplace yet or anything like that. It was just
Right.
mentioned that was going to be a thing. So I
Yeah.
don't think that any of the reviews really reflect that.
Yeah, but I mean, but then on the other hand, is if they didn't have access to it, then it probably means it's not really needed, or it's
True.
not like, because I think some people are framing it like, oh, I can't fast travel unless I pay for it, and I don't think that is actually the case. I think it's more that it takes a while for you to be able to start unlocking these things, which I think most big open world RPGs do well. It was like in Fallout, you had to find the place before you could
Right.
fast travel it, and things like that. Um, so yeah, I do think it is very likely to probably be overblown, but it does just seem a little bit weird to just hide it from reviewers. And I don't mean like don't give them access, but not even mention it to them that's going to be a thing. Because again, I think with how a lot of people in the industry of reviewing games are, I think a lot of people would probably maybe bump their score down if they knew just that there were microtransactions in it at all, because they kind of have that effect on people. So it's not something that bothers me personally, but I did find it weird that yeah, people were, because it was like so positive, like such
Yeah.
positive um videos, and the people talking about it really positively, and then like literally like the day it came out or the day after it came out, there was all this, like it got like massively review bombed on Steam, and at first I was like, what on earth's happened here? And then yeah, I read it and I was like, oh, that doesn't sound great. But yeah, so it wouldn't affect me or affect my likelihood of playing the game, but I just did find that interesting.
Yeah, that's strange, and but yeah, I'm same boat where it's like I want to see how that actually feels when you're playing the game.
Hmm.
Is it lopsided where it's like you are incentivized to buy the thing, but
Yeah.
if there's any hope, those reviewers giving it such high praise without that enabled means that they were
Hmm.
able to progress to the game and not
Exactly. Yeah.
have that feeling on them. But I don't know if anything was tweaked afterwards, which would be I just wouldn't put I wouldn't imagine Capcom doing that, but yeah, I don't know
No,
who
yeah,
actually called that
but
shot.
you have to worry because we see it a lot where studios or big companies get in people's good books, and then they start making these kind of cocky
Yeah,
decisions, and these almost like an arrogance where they're like, oh well, we've just done all this for this past years, we can afford to kind of drop the ball, and off the back of trying to make a quick buck,
right.
and people kind of forgive us. So hopefully, yeah, it's not that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I have another little blurb here just relating to Dragon's Dogma and the open world aspect. So they're using the RE engine, and it's been reported from Eurogamer and other outlets that potentially Resident Evil 9, the next entry, is going to be open world as well. And I thought about watching footage of the game, some of the early playthroughs, or like what's the early release impressions rather. And I'm seeing this open world, and I'm like, this looks nuts, and this is RE Engine. That's pretty crazy. And I was thinking, okay, what if they could do that, or they're kind of testing out what Resident Evil would look like, play like, if they had this open world aspect. Would you? How do you feel about if they were to kind of drag and drop that kind of experience into
Mm.
Resident Evil?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to compare it to like Dragon's Dogma, which is obviously a very different game, like in pretty much every single way. But to me, like Village was open world, no, like or
Yeah,
as open world as a Resident Evil game's been, and I think I can't even foresee how it would work in anything more open than that. Yeah, I don't know. I think the thing with Resident Evil is it's always very deliberate. Like it's deliberately,
right.
there's a reason why you can only access this area for the moment. And there's a reason, and it means that they can incorporate really like ultra specific design choices with backtracking and all these things that makes Resident Evil what it is. So yeah, I don't think it would be a good idea personally. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe there's a way that they can make it work. And I think Village was certainly more open than any other Resident Evil game's been, and it did work really well. Um, but yeah, I don't know if they're going like a Dragon Dogma style open world where it's like a big map with like fast travel points and things like that. Then it sounds maybe like a Resident Evil 6 kind of
Yeah.
moment where they're just going to go in a completely different direction when it's just not needed, and people are going to not like it because of that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think if it's literally the same kind of concept, then that's not a good recipe for success. But
Mm.
if you're tunneling people through areas and kind of channeling where they go and how they unlock stuff and still keeping it creepy, that could work. But
Mhm.
then you're right, that's basically what Village did. So I
Yeah.
don't know how that. Maybe they just kind of they're able to tweak the engine to give you more options of traversal. Yeah, I just don't know what that looks like.
Also, going back to the performance thing, I mean, the Resident Evil games are arguably the best, or the RE engine is arguably one of the best performing engines when it comes to Resident Evil games specifically. You know, all of them run really, really well. They all look amazing. Um, Not buggy as far as I have seen. Like just really well polished, great games that just straight out of the box you play them and no technical issues or anything like that. From what I can remember, Dragon's Dogma 2. I haven't heard like massive technical issues, but you know, I've heard it doesn't run very well, and it stretches PCs like super far. So it's also like, why would you want to kind of chance that with Resident Evil as well? I just think Resident Evil's such a tight, meticulous kind of game that um, it would be a shame to kind of try and put it in a place where it just doesn't belong. Especially when they've been doing so well with it. But then again, we do have the remakes that are probably still going to come with like Code Veronica and things like that. So maybe they're looking at their main series as where they can experiment. I look at games like Final Fantasy where that's also a kind of series that they seem to experiment in each kind of main line. So I hope they're not going down that route because obviously Resident Evil is not that at all. So I'm just hoping that they're not trying to be like everyone else because they have such a unique concept that they don't need to try and be like, oh, this game's open world, it did really well, let's make Resident Evil that. It's like, no, Resident Evil is what it is. It should be
Right.
other games trying to copy you. You shouldn't be trying to kind of branch out and put it in pigeonholes where it doesn't belong.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm nervous, but we'll see if maybe that's not at all the case when
I've
we
lived
do.
through I've lived through an apocalyptic Resident Evil kind of scene when Resident Evil 5 and 6 kind of came
Yeah,
out. So what's another one? You know, we'll just get another resurgence like we did.
that's true. That is true. Alrighty, Cam, we got the next one here. Bungie shuffles marathon leadership as fears of further layoffs loom. It's from pushsquare.com. According to a bombshell report from IGN citing multiple sources familiar with the matter, the director for the team's marathon reboot, veteran Bungie designer Christopher Barrett, has already been replaced in the director's chair by Joe Ziegler, the former Valorant game director who joined Bungie in 2022. That particular aspect of Ziegler's resume is quite important because, according to the report, Bungie is pouring resources into getting Marathon out the door and fundamentally shifting the direction of the game by moving away from custom player characters in favor of selectable cast of heroes. Worse, while pushing out Destiny's 2 last expansion, the final shape remains Bungie's highest priority. Rumors are rife within the studio that more layoffs will swiftly follow its launch. I don't know what to make of this, except for Bungie's in a weird state right now after this PlayStation acquisition. People being laid off. Apparently, Sony, there was a rumor that they're taking over kind of control of the studio, maybe because they have to, because of how things have been run. It seems like a big old mess, but what are your thoughts on this kind of thing?
Yeah, but it does seem like an unfortunate kind of situation that they're in. I I can't remember which one Marathon even is, to be honest. Isn't it some
It's
kind
an
of
older
extraction
title that they
shooter?
did. I think it was
Yeah.
just like an arena kind of shooter
Oh,
game
okay.
or with some story
Right.
content.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it doesn't sound great, obviously. It'll be interesting just to see what it is, just simply because even though there's all this kind of stuff going on around it, all this negativity, I'm still interested just to see what it is and what it looks like because same with Helldivers 2. It's interesting to see these kind of multiplayer things coming out of PlayStation in some way. So yeah, we'll kind of see what happens. But yeah, it's not sounding great.
No, especially when you spend, I forget how many billions of dollars. Was it 4 billion? God,
Yeah, something
I'm blanking.
horrifying. Yeah.
But you spend ungodly amounts of money for this team because of their talent. This is a point of view that's been talked about on other podcasts. But you
Hmm.
spend all this money on this talent, and then this talent starts to leave, or you get rid of them immediately. It's like, okay, why did you get the studio in the first place? Because
Hmm.
it's really about the minds here, the creative talent here, how they understand live service games. But then they all start leaving, or you lay them off, or they quit. So it's like, what do you have left? You have a shell of Bungie, but you spent millions of dollars on it. And then also, we potentially lost Last of Us 2 multiplayer. I'm still salty on
Hmm.
that because of their influence, maybe.
Mm.
But like, what did we spend the money on? And it's just frustrating.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's always a possibility with mergers and things that people become disgruntled from the new ownership and the processes and things that then come in with that. And I think it's understandable thing to happen. Sometimes it's not warranted. I think sometimes people just don't like change for the sake of it. So I think it's yeah, it's obviously Sony's responsibility to make sure that that goes smoothly and that people don't want to leave after you kind of take them over, and also that you don't lay people off because that probably just make people want to leave even more. Um, but yeah, it seems from a outside perspective, which is always never the full story, but it seems like yeah, PlayStation have mishandled it. I think Bungie are obviously a really talented studio. I mean, I don't play Destiny, but I know people love Destiny 2. And obviously, it was a long time ago, so maybe that identity is not there anymore. But obviously, what they did with Halo back in the glory days, so they're clearly a robust, talented studio. But yeah, it just seems like maybe PlayStation bit off a bit more than they can chew by kind of acquiring such a big place, which probably had lots of complex inner workings and how people want it to work. And maybe PlayStation stepped on a few toes. Maybe they didn't get involved enough, or whatever it is. But clearly something um, is going wrong, and whether or not that's just a natural organic thing of the merger or whether or not there's been mistakes made. I think there's always going to be eyes on it because of the kind of size of the acquisition. I think the same's happened with the Activision acquisition as well, with the layoffs and the kind of optics of some of the things that have happened there. So I think I was always going to have maybe more eyes on it. But yeah, it doesn't sound good. So I think all we can do is hope that the people still continuing to work on Marathon are going to make something really good, because there's still the potential for that to happen. Imagine if the same, we hear about Helldivers 2's kind of um, difficult development now that it's out, but we didn't really hear about it during
Right.
the time. But obviously, Helldivers 2's come out and it's fucking brilliant. So it might just be that because of who it is, they're just ultra kind of like it's just brought up to the attention of everybody, when really, it might be that Marathon comes out whenever it comes out and it's awesome. So that's all we can hope, I think, and just hope that this is just all stuff from maybe PlayStation's mismanagement, maybe just natural effects from the merger. But yeah, fingers crossed that it's more positive than it seems from the outside.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said, and this year will be interesting to see with Bungie. And I know they have a Destiny 2 expansion that was pushed, and so it's hotly awaited. So we'll see how they handle that. But yeah, this year going to the next year will be really important for
Mm,
Bungie as a studio.
definitely.
Alrighty, Callum. This one I saw was just really cool. I know I've seen bits and parts of it, but it was on some kind of showcase recently, and it's going to release on PS3 and on PS5 and on PC. But it's this game called Harold Halibut. I have the trailer here. It's a uh, this game is made entirely of real life models and figures like claymation, puppets, and whatnot. It's going to launch on April 16th with a PS4 release planned as well. This game looks insane. I don't understand how they're exactly doing it, scanning models that are real into a game engine, I imagine. But have you seen footage of this? It looks really wild.
Yeah, it looks very interesting. I didn't see it until today, mainly because the same Future Game Show, as you saw, that's where Still Extra Deep was announced. So I was kind of more
Yes.
focusing on that. But I did hear lots of people talking about this, and yeah, it looks really cool. In terms of like the kind of trickery and or the kind of how are they doing this, it reminds me actually of a game, an indie game, which I don't know whether it ever came out, but it's basically somebody would make like you get the little cube people and you but before you kind of build them, they're kind of laid out in this kind of I don't even know how to describe it, but when you like build a paper cube and it's kind of laid out in like 2D squares.
Okay. Yeah.
Someone had kind of made all these characters out of those and imported them in so that they kind of had these kind of paper looking square-headed kind of characters, and every single prop in the game was made that way. So I assume it's
Gotcha.
maybe something like that. But yeah, I'd definitely like to see similar to like a Cuphead thing as well, where they did like the behind the scenes on how they kind of got everything in. Yeah, I'd definitely like to see a kind of behind the scenes of how they've managed to achieve it, because yeah, it looks really, really unique and awesome.
Yeah, it just blows me away where it's like, okay, these are claymation kind of style models, but if you need the lighting and whatnot, the setting in the game, like you have to then transport them in some kind of game engine. I did
Mm.
see there's I haven't seen any kind of like behind the scenes legitimate video, but there's like little clips I've found on YouTube where they're making the sets. So at least like the standalone sets that don't change the camera perspective, those are for sure built, in a diorama kind of like small scale set. But then you
Mm.
have these models that are moving around, and I don't know how these models. That's what I want to know about. Like that's what seems like that'd be the hardest thing to transfer over. I know it took about. I keep seeing it's like 10 years, 15 years. It's been more than a decade they've been working on this game, which is also insane for like an indie studio. But so you have that, and then if you're working on stuff that is physical in the game and then transporting it into this game engine, you have to lock, I imagine, everything in. Like there's no room for like, oh, we got to scrap this and rework it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I spent 2 months making this model. Like I got to keep it because it's physically here, and it just seems so crazy to make a game like this, but it looks cool.
Yeah, I'd be just so interested to see like the workflow, because is there any kind of, I'd assume that they're doing some touching up in like 3D modeling software, or
Yeah,
maybe the whole point is that they haven't done that, but then that would in itself be really interesting to know that like all the artists weren't even using kind of 3ds Max or Maya, or all these kind of 3D modeling and animation softwares, and it's all just done by hand and then kind of imported in, because yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. Would they kind of make the animation sheets um via like film footage, and then somehow import that in and extract that out? And yeah, it's pretty crazy, because yeah, with things like this you always do wonder. It's like, are they going for like a, this is completely claymation, or is it kind of with like an asterisk, like it's claymation models touched up and kind of helped along in kind of animation software? So it'd be interesting, and I don't think one or the other makes it worse or better, but
right.
it's just, I'd just be interested to know exactly yeah, what the process was.
Yeah, this was really really wild. It caught me off guard. But
Yeah.
moving on here, we got Xbox. Some news. This one is just in the context of the PS Vita and how it died, and we got the
Hmm.
PSVR 2 or PSVR because of it. But interesting, regardless. So Xbox is prototyping a native Xbox handheld. It's claimed. This is Jez Corden of the Xbox 2 podcast has claimed that Xbox is working on a new native Xbox handheld. I don't want to keep saying the word Xbox over and over again. On the Xbox 2 podcast, Corden said, "I know that they've Xbox have got handheld prototypes right now." Corden soon clarified that these are new prototypes and not the old prototypes that are often referred to. As pointed out in the podcast, prototypes don't necessarily mean that new products are coming to the market. Corden later said, "No, not a cloud handheld, a fully native Xbox handheld." Xbox is making its move into the handheld market makes sense. In fact, some could even argue that companies tapping into the handheld market are one of the only avenues for hardware growth due to the stagnation in console sales. It's unclear on when Xbox would announce a new Xbox handheld, but various rumors have suggested that the console's next generation of consoles could be a dockable handheld, similar to the Nintendo Switch. Earlier this year, Phil Spencer teased that the Xbox's next generation console will be unique and powerful. How do you feel about the potential that in the future we'll have an Xbox handheld, but not PlayStation would have left that whole world behind. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. I mean, I can see that they said that it won't be a cloud one, which is interesting to me, because obviously X Cloud is something that they're working on, and obviously PlayStation Portal is something I really enjoy, and that would have meant that maybe price would have been low or whatever, but also a fully native one makes sense as well, because I think it's important to remember that Xbox is available on PC and Windows, which is much easier to shrink down into a handheld like a Steam Deck or whatever.
Mm,
They don't. If it was a PlayStation, they would have to create their own OS and do all this stuff. Whereas I'd assume, especially with Windows 11, a lot of its roots being in mobile development, which I think they ultimately scrapped, but obviously it's still there. Um, it would probably be not easy, but it makes sense for them to be able to make something that runs Windows, runs the Xbox app, and maybe they could somehow say, oh, you could download Steam on here and try and compete with the Steam Deck as well. because if it runs Windows, it will run um, anything else as well. So yeah, it's definitely cool. I mean, I've been playing on my Xbox slightly more recently, just because I think the Game Pass games as of late have been really good. Um, most notably Persona 3 Reload, which I'm playing at the moment. Um, so yeah, I'm getting quite into playing on handhelds, and because I don't really play Steam games, that's why the Steam Deck's not really that interested me. But this um, probably would be interesting. So yeah, interested to see what comes out from it. Because yeah, I'm starting to see the struggles of my Series S. Persona 3's been absolutely fine on it, but I was actually gonna give Dead Island 2 a download and see how that performs on my 4K
Mm.
TV via that Series S. I'm sure it's not pretty, but yeah, interested nonetheless.
Yeah, and you mentioned the S. That's where I imagine if they were going to go into a fully native, handheld experience, that the hardware is always scaled down, right, to make it work with
Mhm.
battery life and just the sheer fact that they're shrinking this stuff down. I would imagine the performance would be like an S. Like that's the smallest console they have right now. I feel like you could possibly strip that down even smaller
Mm.
to something like the ROG Ally or the Steam Deck using their own hardware that exists. So
Yeah,
I feel like it would still perform like a Series S, but you have a 720 or some kind of smaller scale screen, so maybe you
yeah.
can get kind of performance that way, but I would imagine it would be in that same vein.
Yeah, I think at 1080p, you can definitely get much better performance. I think my problem with my Series S is I just put it, on my 4K TV, so it's asking a lot of it. Um, and I don't know whether it has like intelligent downscaling or whatever. So
Right.
I might be talking out my arse a little bit, but yeah, I think there's no reason, and I guess it's the opposite to what I was thinking with the a kind of Windows handheld thing. But yeah, they could literally just whack the Xbox OS on it, similar internals to the Series S, 1080p screen, and that would probably be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. But then the problem there is like I played Starfield on my Series S and it was like unplayable. Again, I don't know if that's because I was playing on a 4K TV or not, but if that's the kind of performance they'd get on like flagship games like that, then maybe they would want to boost it slightly. But yeah, we'll have to see. I guess it all depends on what they can squeeze out of those internals and how they can leverage a lower resolution on a smaller screen and get reap the benefits of performance that way.
Yeah, I'm interested. I want to see these companies compete, and it's weird with handhelds where, especially like PC handhelds, there's
Mhm.
now a ton of options. It's like a
Mhm.
whole emerging market that's really
Yeah.
competitive, and I'd love to see Sony jump back into with an actual dedicated handheld too. Like I feel like now's the time for all these different options there, or maybe it's just slim pickings and it's really hard to crack there. Then you have the Switch 2 coming out that's just going to eat everybody's lunch. I don't know how
Yeah.
it's going to unfold.
I've got to say, like, I'm fully converted to a cloud handheld now from the portal. I
Mm,
think just having one system that you're playing on, no matter whether you're playing, sat on your sofa on the TV or on the portal, but being the exact same system, same, uh, you know, drive with the games installed, same, just everything, pick up exactly where you just left off. Um, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of prerequisites of you need to have really good internet, you need to have your PS5 wired in, which isn't possible for some people. Um, and then obviously just the kind of caveats that remote playing comes with at times. But yeah, I just love if internet can improve and remote, cloud gaming can improve. I personally think that for me that is the route I would go down if I had the choice.
mm,
If Xbox were like, oh, we've got this £700, or but maybe not that expensive, but 500 to £700 handheld that's like a Steam Deck, but it plays the Xbox app. Or you can get this xCloud handheld device for £200. I know which
right.
one I'd be choosing for sure. But again, different strokes for different folks and all of that.
Yeah, I need to experience the actual portal and see what I think because that could be really cool. It's just my first instinct is I would love for the thing to actually play the
Yeah,
game, but you then get that performance level with the PS5 by streaming it. So yeah, I
yeah,
would need to try it out.
yeah. I mean, it's something I haven't really been playing as much recently. Again, mainly because of Final Fantasy, but now I've finished that, I've been back on doing some power washing in bed, and
Simulator.
yeah, and I know that I'll be going and doing all of this kind of cleanup stuff on Rebirth. I'll probably be doing that on there as well, so I'll be interested to see how that is. Um, but yeah, I love it. It's just such a great device. I think my only concern is because it is mainly just a dual sense, and I go through so many dual senses because they're just the worst controllers ever made. Um, I do worry that it goes from like a £50 expense if your controller breaks to like a £200 or
True.
£299 or £199, however much it was, expensive if you get like if you get like stick drift on it. It's like, well, that's the entire device fucked now. Whereas if you get stick
Yeah,
drift on a controller, it's like, oh, that's annoying, but I'll go get another one. So yeah, that's still. I mean, it hasn't happened, and I've played on it a huge amount. Um, Probably a good 200 plus hours I've spent on it. So that it is maybe an unfounded worry, but it is a worry nonetheless.
that's true. Yeah, the repairability of the thing is still it seems like yet to
Yeah,
be pushed to the limit. So
yeah.
we will see on that. But Callum, we'll end on the last bit here. I did want to talk about the new game from the Chinese Room, Still Wakes the Deep. I have the little trailer here if you want to watch along with me, but I
Mhm.
did see this over the week, and it was part of that Future Games stream that happened, right?
Yes, it was. Yes,
So it's coming out. I don't have the date yet pulled up. I know it's very soon.
June 18th.
There we go.
Yeah.
It looks nuts. I remember I didn't never finished Everyone's Gone to the Rapture,
Mhm.
but I really like the mood, the feel, the vibe of it. And this one is like not that at all. It's very creepy, very scary.
Yeah, it's you know, Chinese Room has had a pretty extensive history with narrative based kind of games like this. I think obviously they did Amnesia Machine for Pigs, which is probably the closest thing to this, but it's it's fairly public knowledge that it's a very different team, but the same kind of DNA, the same kind of want. All the people that go to the Chinese Room go there because that's where they want to make games, because that's the kind of games that they love. These games like Dear Esther and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, of course. And so yeah, it's really exciting to kind of see people's reaction to this, because the Chinese Room does really have like a big cult following, and it's for these kind of experiences. And it's just amazing to see it kind of out there, especially this particular trailer, because it does kind of focus a bit more on the story. And but yeah, I'm just so excited and proud of kind of everyone who's worked on it, because yeah, it's just been a really amazing kind of journey to be a part of. And yeah, I can't wait till everyone kind of sees it, because yeah, I think it's going to be yeah, really special game, and it's going to be on Game Pass as well.
Nice.
Um, so that will be nice as well.
That is cool. Yeah, and it's just like looking at the gameplay. I'm a big fan of the original Thing movie, and it gives me that vibe where it's like you're isolated. There's something fucked up going on,
Yeah,
and you're just complete like you're stuck in an oil rig. That's the scariest setting I can think of, where you're just like you're
yeah,
trapped there with something.
yeah. It's a really unique setting, really tastefully done as well, because it's set in like 70s,
Mm,
Scotland. So um, really just yeah, I'm just really, really excited for everyone to see it, and obviously excited myself to try and get the platinum trophy on it, of course. So yeah, I'll be asking for tips before it comes out, so I can
right.
hopefully be I'd see if I can become the first person to platinum it. That'd be fun.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So June 18th, that is coming out.
Yes.
Awesome. Callum, well, we'll end it there for the week. You can find us on Twitter at PlasticArtPod. You can follow you, Callum, on Twitter as well at Bear Monroe.
Yep.
If you'll tell the beautiful people out there, good night.
Good night. Oh, it's Harry Houdini's 150th birthday, apparently, according to my Windows search bar.
Whoa. I'm a big fan of him. He's cool.
Yeah, big fan of his work. He's the
Uh,
magician, isn't he?
yeah, I just
Yeah.
watched. There was one movie I watched a while ago where I was like, oh, he's pretty cool.
Well, he's cool enough to get a shout out by Windows on his
Right.
150th birthday.
Yeah, I always liked it's this movie. I'm pretty sure this is accurate, but they go over his whole life and they talk about or kind of show later in his life his mom died and he wanted to at that time there was a lot of these seances were becoming a thing.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, bet I want to talk to my mom. She's dead. I think this stuff is real. Let's see." And so, because of his whole world of like theatrics and tricking people, basically, he'd go to these seances and realize like, "Oh, they're doing this thing that I do. Oh, I know that trick. They're doing that." And but he
Very
never
good.
like
Yeah.
stopped believing that it was possible. He just wanted
Right.
to like find someone who could
The
actually prove
right
it to
one.
him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but instead he turned it into like this organization that would go and like they would debunk him, and
Right.
and he was hated for that. But he's like, hey, I just really want to talk to my mom. You guys are lying to me. He never
Yeah.
found one, of course, because you can't. But it was just really cool
There's
to
that guy
see.
as well. I saw a documentary about who similarly but he was like a just a pure skeptic of everything.
Did he have
I
a
can't
bet or
remember his
challenge, like a dollar challenge tied to it?
possibly, but I remember there was a documentary about him, and he was on lots of. It was around the I want to say like the 80s, where like
I know what you're
things
talking
on
about.
TV, yeah. And he was like very dry kind of person.
Hmm.
But yeah, I remember that was very interesting. And I don't know if you know Darren Brown. He's like a guy from the UK. He
No,
does all these weird, but he's an interesting guy. But he does all these very weird like shows where he sort of does like crazy tricks, and he does like live shows as well where he'll like have people come up and he'll do like tricks with them, and it's all very weird. But he also does stuff where he's like exposed, like you were saying, like exposing like psychics, and he'll basically go to like a psychic's like you know go and sort of book in with like a psychic somewhere, and he will show them that he can do what they do as well. But
mm,
obviously, he's there saying like, I can't speak to the dead, I can't do any of this stuff, but I can do what you do.
right.
So he kind of that also is his shtick. Like he does do that, but he's very open about how it is all just a trick of the mind and stuff. But he's a pretty interesting guy, very strange
I'll
man.
have to look
But
him up.
yeah, he's very famous in the UK. But yeah, I wasn't sure if he made it
No,
over
is
your
he also
side.
kind of comedic too? I feel like I've heard of.
He's funny, yeah. He's a funny
Yeah.
guy, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, he's pretty interesting guy. But he there's a like with everyone like that. He did a couple of shows that were a bit like you're just like okay, it's a bit cringy. Like he did one
Mm,
where he had someone like wake up and think that a zombie apocalypse had happened, so he basically like staged all this thing, but
yeah.
then people weren't even sure if the entire thing was staged. I think it gets like that with magic, because it's like, well, like are these people even really reacting to it, or are they just in on it to make it seem
Yeah.
real to everyone else? So there is that kind of side to it as well. But yeah, no, he's cool. I always liked his more like you were saying, like the debunking kind of side of things, because it's always more fun to watch people like get really pissed off when they realise that someone's trying to disprove their work. Yeah,
Right.
if you can call it work anyway.
Something.
Yeah.
You're too late. I've already summoned Meteor.
Okay, let's go.